You're welcome back. And we will check with the police why they have been assaulting people, journalists on the streets, among other places, and why citizens also appear to be doing the unthinkable, beating police officers. We'll look at that. After that, then we will go to Chiriponi and ask the questions that have to be asked in that area. But as you are aware, many are still talking about the road accident matters. They are shocked about the statistics and want some immediate action to be done. Some are asking, can we have that report so that we can all see what the police is supposed to do, and if the citizens can assist them as well. I'm getting information that the Road Safety Commission was giving about less than half of what it required to be able to do its activities, so they too are looking for money to be able to do what they have to do. So
they didn't get a 6.5 million.
Yes. Now that's the trouble, isn't it? Yeah. So now, as you are aware, a group of police officers decided that a journalist with the Ghanaian Times, Malik Suleimana, and another colleague of his, a woman pregnant, needed to be beaten for attempting to take photographs. A nursing mother needed to be beaten for attempting to take photographs after the one police officer had actually committed a wrong in using his motorbike to smash their car. Beyond that, we have seen reports and videos of assaults either on the police or by the police especially against civilians. So that's what we want to look at now. If you haven't followed these matters in the course of the week, let's quickly listen to the president, who spoke about how unacceptable this is.
It is often said that the public is the police and the police is the public. Currently, the police service, unfortunately, suffers lower public image than it should. I'm glad that the leadership of the police is working hard towards reversing this. Let me cite two examples to make the point. We were all shocked when a video emerged of a tractor driver and his mate assaulting a police officer, Constable Julius Maoli Ekpe, on the Malam Kassoa Road in Accra. The tractor driver and his mate were quickly arrested, put before court, and are currently on remand. In and around the same time, some police officers were also seen assaulting two journalists, Malik Suleimana and Raisa Sambu. I'm happy that the IGP has moved quickly to interdict the police officers who were responsible for the assault, ordering immediate investigation into the matter. It is important for the growth and development of society that justice is done to all manner of persons without fear or favor, affection or ill will. It is in everybody's interest that the police service retains the neutrality and professionalism guaranteed under the Constitution.
In fact, even this morning I spoke to their editors that I still haven't received their formal complaint. Nonetheless, we have been in touch with the Interior Ministry and the Police Service. It is our understanding that they have already, I think, even taken statements, and they are proceeding to conduct their investigation in this matter. We continue to insist that the speed with which the persons who assaulted the police officer were quickly found and arrested and dealt with, that same speed should be applied in finding the officers who assaulted these persons. And for me, these are citizens. It's not even about the fact that they are journalists. These are citizens who were subjected to what appears to be undue force by police officers. It's important that that investigation is done with dispatch, so that it doesn't appear that when it is about the police, they're acting with dispatch, and when it's not about them, they are not. And I think we've made that point quite clear to our colleagues at Interior and to our colleagues at the police service.
And I've even heard that there was still some things about Ghanaian times and whatever. Those are the things that we need to work on and address, because we are partners. We are not supposed to be fighting. If we are fighting, then hallelujah for the criminals. Then they are going to go and say, well, we would have more anonymity and we will have darkness to operate in. So I want to say the ministry that I'm in part, and I speak for the president as well, that we apologize for whatever my sector agencies might have had with you people, but it's not in our spirit. It's in the spirit of the president, as you know, to push the frontiers of free expression, and that's the only way we can progress as a nation.
Right. So you had the president, you had the information minister, and minister for the interior. Kuku, what will be your commentary on these developments? And the president's worry is a worry that all of us must share.
Yes, it's quite interesting. You had the Minister of Information speaking to it, the Minister of Interior also doing same, and the President. And I haven't seen the National Media Commission statement, but I'm told they have also issued a statement. The GJ has issued a statement. But for 3 members of the executive, well placed to comment on this, it's quite refreshing, but I tell you, it means the policemen are in serious trouble. The inertia, the traditional inertia that comes with these things perhaps may not exist this time for them. I'm happy to hear that 3 of them have been interdicted. Right. But the initial report said 10 policemen were involved in the assault. So maybe we better do some checks and see if the other 7 could also be brought under the radar and properly dealt with according to due process. I'm not jumping the gun as such. But the video evidence, from what I'm told, the people have evidence to show that the assault did happen. No, so the internal disciplinary measures the police are taking, refreshing. But I think that we should not stop there. They violated the law. They assaulted citizens of the land. We, in this case, are journalists. We should find ways and means of sometimes testing these things in the court of law. Of course, I know about that other policeman who assaulted a lady. Is it the Midlands or something?
Right.
Yes, I know. And
Scholar.
And I'm told he's a free man.
Yeah, the case was actually aborted on the basis that the complainant was not available for the court processes. All of that were actually untrue. The complainant had never been contacted and told of any court-appointed date. So she has filed a petition to the Attorney General to have the case relisted and commit herself to show up in court. I
think we should take another look at those who handle the prosecution.
Yes.
They must also be brought under the radar and examined critically if indeed they did anything to, undermine prosecution. Because as for the courts, it's what you bring there. The name of the game is evidence. So I'm unable really to take on.
Is that not so basic in prosecution?
I hear you.
That's the key, the principal witness in the matter.
Yeah.
Is not contacted and you're going to court.
The prosecutor must want to prosecute.
Yes.
That's important.
Yes.
So they had gone to court about 4 or 5 times. And on all those occasions, they never informed the complainant. So the judge threw out the case.
Yeah.
The prosecutor must want to prosecute.
The prayer that was made for the case to be thrown out was that the complainant obviously is not interested, when she had never been contacted.
Was it a police prosecutor?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did the police prosecute?
So some solidarity was being shown there.
They must want to prosecute. They know
that the matter can be re-prosecuted.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the Attorney General has been petitioned to put the case back and change whoever is going to prosecute.
Yes, and then the police must take a look at the personnel who handle the prosecution.
Right.
It must be investigated.
I agree.
I mean, only God knows the number of prosecutions that have suffered this.
Exactly what I was going to say. You don't know the number yet.
So let's wait for
but
people to
it's good.
Okay.
Very complimentary. I mean, it reinforces the point I was making. So I have no difficulty with that. So to that extent, I'm praying that this case too will not restrict it to just the internal disciplinary measures, but we'll look at what the law too says relative to assault, in this case by the policemen. We need to build a culture of deterrence, you know, for people in uniform not to think they can take the law into their hands. I'm told it was they were taking a video filming of them, and they thought perhaps that is illegal.
Right.
That's unlawful. Maybe they need to be educated on that too.
Educated over and over and over again.
Yeah.
They are refusing.
Yeah, so that's why you need to sanction them now, beyond the mere education, you know. And then perhaps it's about time civil society and the media organizations, also beyond the internal disciplinary measures, beyond what the judicial process will do, we may have to be looking at options. I've heard somebody say we could boycott them for a while, put them on the blacklist for a while, boycott some of their events. I know it's not the best, because we need them, they need us. Whatever information they are putting out there, the public needs. It's a very tricky and sloppy road. But sometimes, perhaps occasionally, you know, they invite us to their events, we don't go. They bring their new press releases, we don't publish. Not in a regular manner, because it can be dangerous, it can be you know, we may be committing suicide.
Defeating, yeah.
Yes, so I make this suggestion very cautiously.
Okay.
And not even in terms of an ardent advocate of it. But it's there, I feel it, you know, and it's been going on for a long time, let's be honest. Now the other one, I'm not sure if we are entitled to move into the assault on the police.
Right.
Wow, that's also a dangerous occurrence. It's an attack on the state. Okay, but the police must help us so that we can develop that culture of respect for them. We don't lose confidence in them. But I still would not, under any
So that's the
circumstance,
video you are seeing on your shots.
I would not. I have heard other issues. I mean,
The self-defense angle is important.
the self-defense.
Yeah, some
Yeah,
people say
the
that
question is that
Yes, that's
the,
what
the driver
I've
and his
heard.
mate were provoked, and so what they were doing was in self-defense.
Well, the courts will decide eventually. But I've heard that, and I heard it on your station, that the genesis of it. You know, but still, look, a policeman in uniform or any state security operative in uniform should have a certain deterrent effect. Okay, so that if he is aired in the face of the law, there are options that you could take. It's not an easy thing. I sit here, very easy for me to do this analysis and pushing down the truth of Ghanaians. I know it's not easy, but we cannot also sit here and irresponsibly encourage attacks on people in uniform, because it's an attack on the state. You know, it's
okay. Now, Mr. Bochi, the people are asking, coincidentally, ironically, this matter, the driver and his mate allegedly actually were the first to make a complaint at a police station about the development, but it didn't get any attention. It was treated with the usual normal approach. We'll deal with it. And then they went. But once the video became public and the police got to know it, then there was a high-level intervention. So I have asked the question, but for this video that one ordinary citizen decided to take, and thankfully there was no police officer to beat that ordinary citizen in the name of, you cannot take that video. We are using that, and quickly we have arrested these two, the driver and his mate. What's your analysis of all of this?
I'll just say, first of all, that as far back as 1972, in the Republic versus Asante, the High Court of Ghana decided that a police officer has to engage the public legally. Therefore, a failure to engage the public legally converts policing itself into an act of criminality. It is the legal relationship that justifies the policeman seizing me. It is the legal relationship that justifies the policeman restricting my movements. A failure to properly arrest me may convert my arrest into kidnapping. Therefore, these are all regulated by law, and there are risks involved if the police do not follow through properly. Once there's a failure of that legal relationship, the other person on the other side, who is a citizen, is entitled to apply self-defense rights to save himself from the risk of, say, kidnapping, for example, from the risk of assaults. In the Republic of Asante, what we saw in the video, a similar situation happened, in which the policeman, I think in that particular case, was thoroughly beaten the Republican Asante. And the court said, because of the failure to properly arrest the citizen, the beatings of the policeman by the citizen was justified on grounds of self-defense.
Yes.
That is why a policeman must be careful in his relationship with the citizen in respect of the legality of that relationship. Because a failure of that will convert an otherwise good initiative on the part of the policeman into something otherwise than that, and which can therefore justify the public doing what they have to do, which also is equally wrong. Now, let me just go forward to also say that in the Republican Asante, however, the citizen was convicted on the other ground of beating the policeman in uniform. And the focus was on his uniform, because the police person who is in the uniform is a human being, is a citizen. He can do other things, he can do wrong. But the coat of arms and the uniform that he was is the property of the state, and the coat of arms is the very embodiment of the state authority. Therefore, any mistreatment of the coat of arms, and I've always teased my students when I spoke to them about this, that case may stand for a dangerous proposition, that beat a policeman, but be careful how you touch his uniform when you're beating him. In other words, if you can beat him without the uniform, then you're okay. But if you touch him, I mean, I joke about this. But there's a risk in the police not going about their work in the legal, lawful way. Look,
so educate us. What is it about the policeman doing it and doing it right? Simply, you know, telling the citizen of their Miranda rights before they arrest them?
Something. It is training. I used to do police training between 2006 and 2012 when I stopped doing this. And I remember the last training that I conducted, over 100 police officers who have been trained. Not, well, about 2 or 3, but virtually all of them had not had or even read the Criminal Procedure Code at that time, now the Criminal Procedure Act, or the Criminal Act, the Criminal Offences Act. That is your basic tool. An arrest is a specific process. And I have said,
police training.
After police training. Wow. There are many of them who may have seen it in police school, training school, but they don't own copies. Now these things, it's a dangerous thing, because you see, when you're arresting someone, it's a process. Yeah. And the process has to be complied with fully. Now, a failure to comply with the process converts the arrest into something else. And as I said, if you force the person contrary to the process, that becomes kidnapping, for example. You're trying to kidnap me. I can fight against it because it's not a legal process. Now, these are dangerous.
So how are they supposed to do it rightly? Can you educate us? Take advantage of this situation.
I think in a very simple way. When a policeman is arresting someone, he must first of all use the word arrest. When he's speaking in English, the word arrest must come. So you are hereby arrested for A, B, C, D, contrary to so and so. I am taking you to the police station in respect of that. Now, in the Republican Asante, this is what happened, which happens a lot. The policeman invited the accused person, the suspect at that time, to the police station. The suspect said, go, I will come. You see, once you use different words, and today you hardly see them even use the word arrest. They'll tell you, you are wanted at the police station. You are needed at the police station. Come with me to the police station. All these things are not arrests. You have to arrest him. Now, the danger for...
You must make a contact with the body.
Yes. The further danger with the police in Ghana is that the Constitution has also further heightened it. And I have to be honest, it's one part of the Constitution I deeply regret. Because the Constitution has said a person being arrested must be informed in a language he understands, which is very risky. And I've told my students, you have to tell me what language I speak. Well, people have heard me speak English, so I'm out of that problem. I mean, that difficulty. I can't pretend not to understand English. But someone can say, the only language I speak is, say, Wale. And imagine the police guy who's arresting you and who can't speak Wale. And even if you can speak Wale, you must use the word arrest, which is a term of art in Wale. We have difficulties. But the point, but at least there are broad thresholds, and the high courts will understand some of these difficulties. You must meet sufficiently that threshold. You can't meet it fully, but meet it sufficiently. But a failure to use these things, and I keep talking about training, the police people, many of them have not been trained in the art of arresting. Now that is the first contact upon the commission of a crime. Nobody's sure exactly what happened between this police officer and the driver, but I imagine that somebody may go to the car, and it happens all the time. Come out to the car. They'll stop you and ask you to come out of the car. Probably seize your keys, ask you to follow them. At that point, there's been no arrest. At that point, what I see is a case of the policeman forcibly seizing my property without a court order. I'm going to fight back. So there are dangers, but the point I'm making to also is this, that when the policeman has acted illegally and the public or whoever it is trying to fight back. Remember that the right of self-defense, though, is a full right to which you are entitled. When that right is exercised against the policeman in uniform, and the uniform is touched in any shape or form, there's a separate offense that has been committed by you, even though you're also exercising your right. So there's a balance in here. And I keep talking about this. Look, there are many laws for the police. I don't think they need more laws. For example, the Criminal Act, the Criminal Offences Act. Internally, the police themselves have standard operating procedures. There's a publication on that. The police have handbook. There's a publication on that. In fact, the police have the service instructions, which I have here, for example, on the specific use of firearms. And you know, recently the commission did work on that. The police have specific instructions on the use of firearms. The police have, the embodiment of regulations that they are supposed to have regulating their work. Question: does the average policeman on the street know these things? So it's a question of training, a question of lack of accountability that was mentioned. These things happen, and we don't see any accountability. You create a sense of impunity. You create a sense that these can be repeated. And if I can just quickly run through, but the importance or the imperative of training and the imperative of retraining and constantly continuing with this cannot be underestimated. Because I guarantee you, one of the most difficult jobs in Ghana today is policing. And the reason it is difficult is because the law has made it difficult. Part of the reason why I think the Constitution is the way it is because of where we came from, because of our constitutional history, our political history. So having moved from a military era where the police/military were, essentially we had a police state of assault. So in a democratic space, we have put in all kinds of restrictions on policing to ensure that the police are regulated. Unfortunately for the police, I don't think training has met that expectation. But fortunately for the police, we do not have sufficient number of suits in the courts. Because if the police were being sued, I can see a stampeding situation that would lead the police to become not only reactive, but actually they'll take a laid back approach. And we also do not want that. So I think that training and retraining is something we can't emphasize enough. And I think one of the major problems we have today, as far as our policing is concerned, is the huge problem of capacity. There's a big gap of capacity, and we're beginning to see them play out in different ways. Even though I have to say that this is not new. I think people are saying, why do we have the ascendancy of police brutality? It is not new. What we have new is the reporting.
Okay.
It's always been around, but we have reporting. It constantly happens. Look, I go to the police station and I keep asking the question, why do people arrested? Why do they get stripped of their clothes?
So the question is,
and,
in a minute, how does this affect the police-civilian relationship?
Invariably, as Quick mentioned, there's a danger that this will become, especially as we've seen it on the screen, the police will become more defensive and the citizen, again, will become more assertive in terms of their reaction to attempted arrest, etc. Once again, if the police are trained, particularly in the art of arresting, that is the major key. Okay. If the police arrest professionally, then all these fights and fightbacks and all these then will become a case of citizens actually aggravating the offenses.
Right. So, Kofi, Abuchi mentions something that's quite worrying. If, as a police officer, you have gone through your training, and the two common books that you should even know them from back to back, you don't have access to them. And you can tell a good number of them, they hardly read them. They don't even have them in the first place to read. How does that compound the situation?
Some things are not taught, they are learned. I doubt if they don't have access. My worry is whether they want to access. Because I have a lot of police friends, and you go and see Professor Bosu's book there, Professor Benson Bosu's book, and those who want to learn, they find a way to learn, but they are a bit. I don't think we've created a situation where there is benefits for them to really do the things that like Abuchi is talking about. So you don't want a situation to where they come under so much attack that's what forces them to learn. So the training thing comes in. I mean, I say this week it happened to me. Like you're saying, somebody invites a senior police officer invites my client. Okay, I go with the person. They proceed to treat him haphazardly, even start all kinds of things. I said, no, please, let's go do things, And I asked, are you taking a record of the proceeding? They're like, and they tried to shut me down. I said, no, then I'll take a record of the proceeding. Please, for your information, I'm taking a record. And I started taking a record, and I was assaulted. A senior police officer attacked me, tried to physically take my property. in a room of about 5 people, okay? We managed to resolve things. We are still ongoing. But my point is that I don't think it's a bad person per se. A police person told me something. He said, when they wear the uniform and when they take the guns, they assume a different personality. And I think there's truth to that. The psychology of the uniform and a gun makes them, it's like mob mentality. You know, when you are alone and when you are with your brothers and students and that kind of thing. That, I think there should be training to manage it, okay? And at the end of the day, we need to appreciate that, look, we need them in a certain sense, but we cannot have a situation where, like Aboji is saying, you are committing crimes as a police officer. This country has a history of changing from a police force to a police service. There's a reason why.
Form.
Pardon?
We went for form over substance.
Oh, well, I get it, but you know, there's a philosophy there that you want people to have a sense that we are a service, okay? But let's say this also before I proceed. Look, I look at the posture of the president, his statements, and his body language. I look at the posture of the Minister of Interior, statements, and his body language. I look at the posture of Kojo Oponkroma, statements and body language. I couldn't ask for more. I'm very happy I'm hearing that kind of, you know, stuff coming out of the leadership. So the commitment is there. I urge them to move on to make it happen. All right. Now, we need to appreciate something. And this is from the Republic versus Asante. I'll read this first, quickly. It says that the liberty of every individual is protected by the law until he acts in contravention of the dictates of the law to entitle a police officer to interfere with that liberty by exercising against him the powers with which the officer is legally clothed. There's a lot of technicality here. People sometimes, like I say, you haven't arrested a person, you start treating them a certain way. It says no. They must have acted in a certain way that requires you to act in a certain way. And when you are going to act in that way, I'm talking about the police people, you also have to act exactly as the law requires you to act in reaction to that.
Okay.
And just this one, and then I'm done with the reading. It says, where in the instant case, a person is charged with the offense of assaulting a police officer in the execution of his duty, there's a difference there, whether you're on duty or not. The prosecution must prove, one, that the victim of the alleged assault, the police officer, okay, is a police officer, that he was in the due execution of his duty at the material time, and the conduct of the accused constituting the offense. But it is not necessary to prove that the accused knew that the person assaulted is a police officer, if in fact he was, and it is also not necessary to prove that the accused knew that the officer was at the material time in execution of his duty. The technicality here is that when you cross what is your legal duty, especially when you infringe the person's rights, you are open to all kinds of things, even as a police officer. Okay, there are fine things. We can't survive without the police. Okay, we can't. But given this thing that we've gotten to know, that when they put on the uniform, when they take up the arms, the personality changes, they must be self-policing. I like what Kenashibe is doing, trying to mobilize. I think you're aware, I'm on that platform too. Yeah. And I think that is where the solution is quick. Who was asking for what to do. Here's one of my suggestions. If a policeman is found having committed such a crime, assaulting a nursing mother, deal with the person as such. And let's not expect the state to do that for us. Let the journalists and other persons, with the support of all of us, okay, take those matters on. If, however, the person is proven to have committed a crime using the police uniform, the rest of the police system must descend on him because he's bringing your name down. Because you cannot harbor criminals in the force and put the uniform over them. That's why we move from police force to police service. I've said many things, but what I want to say is this. Our police should endeavor to try and do legal policing. If they do not do legal policing, they must understand that they put themselves at risk of people doing things to them which ordinarily nobody can support. Now, if this conflict continues, we would have to resort to the same law to try and distinguish between those persons who use the police to commit crime against those persons who want to be real police people. But let the politicians lead. I hear the president right, I hear Kojo Oponkroma right, I hear the interior minister right. Please take further steps. These matters, like you said, is the reporting that has changed. Too much of it is happening.
Within a section of the public, they are asking for something, and I want you to help educate all of us whether they are right. They are suggesting that the driver and his mate have been arrested. They have actually lost their liberty in the last few days. They are in custody. They were taken to court and remanded into custody. They are saying they feel the same thing ought to be happening to these police officers rather than they being interdicted.
I understand the sentiment, but look, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They have power, or the police seem to say they have power, but I believe the power is in the judiciary. Because of that, they are bringing it down on everybody because they can. The reason why the justice, the woman who holds the scales of justice, is blind is exactly this, that it is no respecter of persons or status. Now, I think that the police, in order to win our confidence as a public, and because we also need to support them, should show themselves just in everything they do. Now, we talk about this assault of the Scarlett's case, where a police prosecutor clearly didn't want to prosecute. And then you have the, other cases where, and there are stories that this gentleman was first assaulted, and then in the self-defense, they went overboard. The police, and look, there are some very fine lawyers there. Some people in the police hierarchy are very fine people. Maybe if they are allowed to do their work, they will convince all of us that they actually don't want these miscreants amongst them. So the short answer to your question is, I agree that it must be seen that they are treating everybody the same. And in this case, it's not being seen. It is necessary for us to build a certain level of confidence in them. The last point is this. A lot has been said about the police council, not or the group or the body that reviews police actions. In many developed places, it is not made up of policemen. I think we should start thinking that way. I've said something and I'll repeat it, that if NCC is independent, the EC is independent, Shraj is independent, I think we must start considering making the police service independent on those lines and allowing for a review of their actions in a way that makes them more accountable. Move from a force to a service in reality.
They are presently pursuing a transformation agenda. Now, your reference to the police officer in the Scala, in that prosecution, I must say that I've had the opportunity of meeting the prosecutor. And the prosecutor informs me that it does appear from what he said that he rather has been misled in the process. It is not that he's not been committed, and it is not the fact that he may have collided or colluded with Scala because he's one of their own, but it is the case that he may have been misinformed, because as a prosecutor, all he waits for is for you to say you are bringing the accused person to court, and then you would have informed the complainant, and all of them will come together. It is the investigators' job.
I think there was a tragic failure of management of this particular case. Exactly. If again, I'm forgiven, but that's the case in which the woman was beaten.
Yeah, Midland.
Yeah, tragic failure. First of all, the police prosecutors prosecuting cases itself is a default measure. It's a default system.
They depend on the investigators.
Right. It's a default system because we don't have the sufficient number of lawyers to do that. And so the police were drafted in the 1970s to supplement the lack of lawyers in the Attorney General's Department to do this. Once you have a case involving the police, that shouldn't have been allowed to hold sway anymore. We should have then gone for regular lawyers. The Attorney General's Department should have taken the lead on this because you don't have the police prosecuting one of their own. The police as a force institution depends on one of the principles of esprit de corps and camaraderie. The fact that among themselves, there's a certain morale. I mean, they relate to each other in a certain way. You can't expect them, properly speaking, let's be honest, they can't prosecute each other. I can't look, if I'm one of them, I can't look my junior colleague in the face. So I think that particular case, in terms of management, it shouldn't have been that way at all.
The prosecution should be the Attorney General's Department.
So moving forward, we have an opportunity to rectify that. It shouldn't be a police officer.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a petition before the Attorney General, and we trust that the Attorney General will act on it. Now, Randy, the thing to look at is what all of these developments, attacks on journalists, on civilians and civilians attacking the police, what it does to the relationship that is required. The police must be our friend. Otherwise, law enforcement, criminals will have their way.
Well, you know, Kofi said something interesting, that this is not new. It is the reporting which is new. And so I asked myself, for example, this issue of the interdiction that has happened to the 3 police officers and all that, if there weren't journalists involved, if the Ghanaian Times itself had not taken the stance they took together with the GGA and others, what would have happened in this case? If they didn't have video evidence, what would have happened in this case? In fact, with respect to the Midland issue, if that video did not exist, the video which brought out the outrage in people and therefore the disappointment in how the case ended, what would have happened? If you take the case of the UEW, where now the police say they intend investigating a case of assault brought against the member of parliament, and he's been asked to report to the police and all that. If that video didn't exist, I mean, what would have happened? If you look at the driver and the mate, you know, I played the video which had gone viral because it didn't make sense to me. But I had to play the second video, which was done by a journalist from your outfit who went there for the eyewitness report, which then suggested that there perhaps was an initial assault by the policeman, which then necessitated this assault by the driver and his mate and all that. And I'm saying that in the absence of all these videos, what would have happened? So these things have been happening. The issue of police treating civilians with impunity, civilians taking the law into their own hands, they've been happening. I see this as a golden opportunity for us to take the steps necessary to reduce, if not eliminate, these issues. And how do we do that? The professional investigation and prosecution of these matters that I have mentioned, the one about the Ghanaian Times journalist, the driver and the mate with the policeman involved, and listening to Kofi and the 2 Kofis.
Senior.
Yes. On the case you referred to.
Yeah, Asante and the Republic.
Asante and the Republic. It appears to me, I mean, from a layman's point of view, that both parties could even be in trouble.
Okay, Randy, just a minute for me. I understand that we have a little problem with your mic at this point, so they will tweak it, and then we'll get to hear you with the rest of the commentary that you are making. And of course, I'd like to draw your attention to the other issue that happened in the Swedro municipality, municipal assembly. Initially, people thought that it was a police officer who was, you know, kicking that guy who had, you know, been made to sit down in the manner they were doing. The police have issued a statement to say that the one kicking the young man in the video is not a police officer. He's supposed to be one of the Agona Swedro's, their guards. They have their assembly has its own guards.
Was there a police officer in the background?
Yes, I think that's another question people are asking. You're welcome back. So let's hear Randy continue with his point.
So I don't know where I went off, you know, but
okay. So you were emphasizing the point of how you had sort of chronicled capturing of videos and information available to make these matters, you know, gain the necessary attention, and yes, and how for this journalist, if it were not a journalist and there was no, you know, statement from various sections, what would have happened?
Right. So back to the issue. I mean, my colleagues on the panel have raised different angles, and this is what I'm saying. You know, and that's where I referenced Kofi Abuchi's point that these things are not new. It's the reporting which is new. What it means is that this level of impunity and discipline has been with us for a very long time. I see this as a golden opportunity, you know, for us to deal with these issues once and for all. You know, even if we won't be able to eliminate them, we can drastically reduce the occurrence or incidence of this nature. Now, if you look at the people involved, you're looking at the police on one hand, you're looking at media, you're looking at normal private citizens, you're looking at politicians involved. Now, I think that a professional investigation and prosecution of these issues would go a long way in serving as a deterrent.
You mean the police being prosecuted?
Everybody. I mean, but
what the commentators say is most worrying is that since 2016, all of these happenings, particularly brutalities by police against civilians, there's no single prosecution.
2006.
2006. Sorry.
That's why I say.
Since 2006.
That's why I make the point that this is a golden opportunity. So, with the difficulty Kweku has in, for example, the media boycott of police activities and all that, let's flip the coin and let the media rather take the successful prosecution of these cases as a crusade.
Yeah.
And say that how we're going to deal with this issue rather than boycott the police, because if there's a crime being committed and they bring us the information, are we going to say we will not? So maybe how to deal with this issue is to rather mount a crusade, launch a crusade, and say that, look, we want this impunity and this level of indiscipline to end once and for all. And so we're going to follow these cases throughout the way, ensure that those who are responsible for a professional investigation in these matters do so, that we do not have an issue of these cases being curtailed. Let them go through the due process.
If people are innocent, has reminded you that the GJA has been on this, the Media Foundation for West Africa, they have been on this. Ken Ashigbe has decided to do a one-man job, getting all various people involved, and he spoke about a platform that we all belong to. We have heard them. What results have we had? Well, it's not late. I'm saying that even if you look at what's happening, look, the interdiction of the police officers, it had to do with the persistence of media houses, of civil society, and all that. I mean, the issue of what has been submitted to the Attorney General with respect to the Midland savings. Right. It also had to do with maybe a group of lawyers, of people in civil society who thought that, hey, I mean, we saw what we saw on video. You cannot have this kind of situation. Right. So, for example, I ask myself this question of the police. If you can interdict those involved in the Ghanaian Times issue, how come the guy involved in the Midland savings is not on interdiction? I think he was.
Initially.
He was, but there's a certain time you cannot continue to interdict him. So he's back. You know, so the point I make is that, look, instead of this boycott and those things, it won't serve our interest. Let us all say that, look, we've come to a point from 2006 till date, no prosecutions have happened. This time round, everybody, be it the police, be it the politician, be it the ordinary citizen. If, for example, there is a prosecution and of the Trotron mate and the policeman's issue, and from the case that was read to us, if, for example, the court finds that, look, the policeman assaulted those people and is dealt with in accordance with the law. The law also finds that these two guys assaulted a police officer in uniform and they are also dealt with in accordance with the law. You think it will not be a deterrent? It will not serve as a deterrent for any policeman, especially when everybody now knows that most mobile phones are cameras and you do not know who's capturing what you're doing, especially in the full glare of the public. You think that policemen will not be more careful in going about their duties? You think that civilians wouldn't be more careful in doing the kind of things that they do? If the Midland guy, on the basis of what we saw in the video, if action is taken against him, you think that it will not go a long way to serve as a deterrent? If you look at what happened at UEW, if we have a successful investigation and prosecution of the matter, and the law takes its course, and people get punished for it, you think it will not serve as a deterrent for either policemen doing the wrong thing or politicians throwing their weight about? Right. Something ought to give. It is the lack of prosecution from the 2006 to today. But I wanted to ask whether this inertia that the police is accused of, is it really about when it is about their own, or that is the general disposition of our police service? We just heard, it's reported that Anas just this week was beginning to complain about the murder of Ahmed Swale and the lack of, focus, the lack of attention, the lack of the everything that suggests that practically nothing is being done.
You see, let me deal with the issue of the Anas thing. I have not spoken with Anas. I don't have details of why he is
complaining.
He's complaining, especially when this incident occurred about 2 or 3 months ago. You know, this is an issue of murder. The police. But you see,
assassination.
Yes, assassination. Thank you, assassination. You know, I do not have the details of why he is worried already at this time. It is not to suggest that you cannot find assassins within 1 day or 2 weeks or whatever. But generally, it could be, perhaps maybe people would see it as too short a time for anybody to be worried about this. But you see, there's a certain level of opaqueness when it comes to police investigations. You know, which it's like we don't owe you information.
Right.
We don't owe you an update. You know, the thing must assume some general, public outrage before you are obliged a 2-paragraph statement or something. That level of opaqueness does not help. We don't expect the police to give us daily reports. But there's a certain level of opaqueness. So something is happening, you don't know, you hear police, and it's gone to deepen the level of mistrust that people have. We hear that there's a police investigation. On the basis of that investigation, decisions are taken. The contents of that investigation, nobody knows, nobody has. And yet, an issue which perhaps had a national dimension to it, the police have gone to investigate. On that basis, the executive takes actions on it. We do not know what is contained in that thing. That level of opaqueness does not help in building confidence and taking away the mistrust that the public has as far as the police is concerned. Right. And I would not be surprised if perhaps it's that level of opaqueness that has led Anas to say what he's saying. To your earlier issue of whether it's about the police themselves or it's both ways. I mean, Kofi Abochi has talked about the camaraderie and morale and all that, and therefore one of your own. I mean, and let's face it, even for us media people, we can also be accused sometimes of doing those things when it comes to our people and all that, or those who are colleagues and all that. But you see, the truth of the matter is that a lot of the problems that we've had, and I don't know what will be contained in the Justice Shorts Commission's report, but for those who watch my program, they know that I have a certain position as far as us dealing with all these vigilante things is concerned, because it appears that, look, the police is totally helpless when it comes to issues that concern the political class, especially those who are in government. And until we decide to look at that particular issue and see how we can resolve it, we'll be going nowhere. We can engage in enactments every week until we deal with the fundamental issue of why the police are incapacitated, especially when crimes and occurrences are politically linked. We will not go anywhere, Samson.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And my police friends, quite a number of them have been sending in a lot of messages to me. There are those who have issues questioning why you think that a police officer cannot prosecute a colleague police officer successfully. And they ask the question, are you saying that, if a lawyer, and because I'm a lawyer, I sit here all the time, that's how it happens. If a lawyer does wrong and is being prosecuted by the Attorney General's department, they'll be lawyers. They'll prosecute them, and they do it every day. A judge, where there is evidence, a judge will not say they will refuse to convict a colleague judge who has
on the face of it, that is true.
Okay.
Apologies.
Okay.
No, go on. On the face of it, that is true. But let's remember that we are dealing with context here. The relationship between a police officer and another police officer is a different relationship. It's a structured relationship. It's hierarchical. It is a force body. It has camaraderie involved, morale. Lawyers don't have similar things.
Okay.
But apart from that, I'm just saying, let's remember this. Police prosecution is a default system.
Right.
It is something that was brought, I think, during our Champions era. It was brought in as a remedy for the insufficient number of lawyers in the AG's department.
That's right.
So they are a help. They are supplementary. Therefore, I'm saying that in a scenario in which we have a police officer being the suspect or being the accused, the default system should not hold sway anymore, given the peculiar relationship they have with each other. I think there's one classic instance in which the matter should have simply been taken out.
Okay, so like the Bible's instruction, avoid the appearances of evil. Just avoid the appearance of it. The perception of it, that you would be, you act in collusion. Now one police officer wants to say it differently. He says, these police brutalities and non-professional conduct can be attributed to the mode of recruitment in recent times.
Yes, a factor.
Too much political protocol considerations in the recruitment. Party boys and the training, people are not interested.
He's right to explain, but are we suggesting that before the party intrusion,
there wasn't that?
We didn't have this subculture?
Well, yes.
This is
a very important point.
Shifting to the middle.
I think
Used to be an extremist because everything is right to an extent.
Randy spoke Chinese.
That's what we are all making, which I think we should emphasize. First point, that this has been happening, but the new reporting is what is bringing it to the fore.
Right.
There is a fight, especially by people in authority, against recording audio and video. Here is the situation. There is no law against that. And if anybody assaults you for recording them, please, it's an assault. You need to make sure, for instance, if it's an audio recording, that the persons are aware. When it comes to video recordings, I'm talking about public recordings.
I was about to ask you whether
it's public. It's just public recordings, please. Yes. It is not what you record, it is what you do with it. My interest now is this, that we should encourage citizen journalism, because that is the way we would improve the transparency in our system, and these things will come to the fore. Most of these recordings you are seeing, they are citizen journalists. I'm making this point because it's important.
In fact, all.
And a lot of people who are found caught by this will fight it. The police have assaulted people for doing this. So let the point be made that it is not against the law to record publicly anything going on. You just have to be careful what you use it for. So everybody, if you're acting in public, know that you may be recorded, and it is good for us all.
It's important to state, Sam, and I know we can't be honest, but it's important. It's important to state that police brutality can be confused for the use of force. Police use of force is legitimate to a point. So the police are allowed to use force.
Reasonable.
But use force after something has failed.
Yes, that's it.
And for example, in the case of arrest, use force after someone has resisted arrest. Now in the use of force, you have to use proportionate force.
Yes.
Now once you go beyond proportionate force, that is when people say beatings. That is when people say assault. So if it's proportionate force, that is allowed within the context of arrest, for example.
Okay.
But if you start beating someone, in the case of beating, it is one-sided. It is no more exchange. It's not as if the police are actually trying to clip you down, but the police are probably kicking you when you're on the floor. That is not proportionate in the context. So again, training, these are legal things, and even lawyers sometimes struggle with them, let alone some police officer who may have had 2, 3 months, 4 months training in the police training school. And then since he came out, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, everything is gone. And so I think the training, I'm not sure how this can be gone about, but enough training and retraining. That's the only way we can go around this. Otherwise, this will be repeated over and over.
I hope this is captured.
Let me share. Let me share.
Thank you.
Let me share a few of the comments that have been brought in with you, and then after that we will go to Chiriponi and get also later to party financing and the things that must be done to avoid corruption. Now, Musa Abator in Kumasi says that over 60 people dead. It's heartbreaking. The authorities are sitting aloof, watching Ghanaians die through road accidents. What have they done over the years in relation to policy to curb this phenomenon? This must be a national tragedy. Okay, and you saw the take of the Kenyan journalist I played to you. It's about responsibility. Nobody takes responsibility in this country. Masaudu Mohammed Mahey says, my condolences to the bereaved families whose relatives lost their lives in this gory accident. On Tuesday, I boarded one of, on Tuesday I boarded one of these buses and tried checking the speed limit using my phone app. Shockingly, the driver could speed up to 145 kilometers per hour. Ni Anan Sumang in London says that I am even surprised that we are not having more accidents and deaths on our roads. You have a country where we have no street lights, even in the roads of the big cities, not to mention the trunk roads linking towns and villages, no road markings. In the civilized world, we still have indisciplined drivers, but these facilities tend to curb and many at times prevent accidents. As a country, we have lost our priorities. Kofi Atta in Cambridge says Ghanaian roads, Ghanaian roads, okay, the roads are Ghanaian. Ghanaian roads are nothing but death traps. I was in Ghana in January and could not believe the indiscipline and recklessness on the roads. I visited my alma mater at Cape Coast and in Kwetia with my daughter. The way drivers overtake recklessly, we are lucky to be still alive. There were numerous broken down vehicles, excessive overloading, unsecured and dangerous loads, motorcycles going through red lights, etc. There is total disregard for road and traffic regulations in Ghana. Ilyasu in Tamale says the police MTTD checkpoints must be brought back to check on recalcitrant driving and other abuses on our roads. Again, there must be mandatory towing services to tow all accident vehicles on our roads. These accidents are avoidable if Ghanaians insist on the right things. Peter in Takwa says, please, most of the accidents on our roads are as a result of engineering problems. Why are we using single lane routes? I believe a dual carriage route will drastically reduce this sort of head-on collisions, which is mostly on our roads. Thank you very much. We take a break now. We return to Chirponi. We'll be right back.